I want to start our study of producer theory by describing to you the key assumptions of the model of the firm that we're going to use throughout the course. The key assumption is that the firms maximize profits. They always take the action that maximize profits subject to two constraints. One is technological constraints. They cannot do things that are not technologically feasible. And second, economic constraints. They cannot take actions that are not economically feasible. Since this assumption is going to play a critical role throughout the course, it's very important that we understand its meaning well. So let's look at each component of the assumption. First, let's look at the meaning of maximization of profits and why that may be a good assumption. Now, the key idea here is that firms are owned by people, that people care about consumption, not about the firms themselves, and that the more income they have, the more they can consume. And since they own the firms, they get profits. They own the profits that translate into income, then translate into consumption. So what do the owners want? The owners want to maximize profit in order to maximize their consumption. Now, is this a good assumption? I would argue that it's a good approximation. That if you look around the world in the data, it's not a bad approximation. But it's important to emphasize that it's not a perfect one. And let me give you a couple of examples. One is what sometimes is called gold-plated behavior by CEOs. So some CEOs, chief executive officers of companies, spend money in perks for their job, like very luxurious airplanes, like very expensive furniture from their office, that maximizes their utility from the job, but does not clear that it maximizes profits from the owners. In some sense, you can actually argue that they take profits away. So let's think as a counterexample of this are CEO perks. Another counterexample of this could be the utility from work or utility from company for small business owners. So suppose you're a small business owner that you spend a lot of your time raising your business. You may actually derive utility from particular aspects of your job, again, from having a nice environment to work, etc., and may be willing to trade some profits for some perks at the job that make your life better or your utility better off. So the bottom line here is that the assumption is not perfect. There are counterexamples, but it's a good approximation. Now, what do we mean by technological constraints? The idea is that there are natural limits to production. Think of this as, if you wish, limitations of our knowledge and the knowledge of firms of how to produce goods. So, for example, it would not be possible for a company right now to sell a trips to Alpha Centauri because we don't have the technology to ship people there in a reasonable amount of time. It would not be possible for a company to try to maximize profits by producing computers using only robots and artificial intelligence because we don't have the technology. The actions, in other words, that the firms take to maximize their profits have to be within feasible technological constraints. And a lot of what we're going to do over the next few videos is think about how to model those technological constraints and what are their properties. Finally, think about the meaning of the economic constraints. The idea here is like, as there are natural limits to production, there may be economic constraints to what the firms can do that are given by the properties of markets. So these are constraints driven by markets. And let me give you a couple of examples. In example number one, it may be that the firm, this firm says, I'm going to maximize profit by selling 1 billion color TVs per year. But if the market for that is not there, if demand is not sufficient, only let's say 100,000 people want color TVs at any price, then that is not a feasible action by the firm. It violates economic constraints. Similarly, for example, the firm may say, in order to maximize profits, I want to sell that many units of the good at that particular price. But if the market cannot bear that price, or if the firm is limited by market forces, as we will see later on, to sell at a particular price, that is also not a feasible action. So economic constraints, properties of the markets, are going to limit the set of actions and how they affect profits that firms can take. And again, we're going to spend a lot of time in this unit modeling competitive firms, and in units 6 and 7 modeling firms in which they are operating in what are called imperfectly competitive markets that look a little bit different and are quite interesting. Now, clearly, this is an extremely simple model of the firm, and it lacks several elements that you may think are very important aspects of the problem. So let me highlight some of them. One of them, for example, is a static model. There is no time, as you're going to see. We're going to model the firm in a static context. The second, we're going to have no uncertainty. We're going to assume that the firm knows exactly what are the profits that are generated by any set of actions that it can take, and it has perfect information about its environment. The third thing is that there is no innovation. The firms know their technological constraints, the technology, and they maximize profits with respect to that, but there is no issue of how much to invest in R&D, etc., in the basic model of the firm. And the fourth thing is there is no personal economics. In particular, there are no managers, etc. The managers, if you wish, are these idealized entities that really seek to maximize profits to make the owners better off. Now, you are probably thinking at this point, this model of the firm is going to be ridiculous. No time, no uncertainty, no innovation, no managers. Ridiculous, you may say. I want to assure you that you should bear with me through the beginning of the unit, because by the end of the unit, you're going to see that the basic model of the firm has survived in economics for a reason. It really gives a lot of insights, despite the fact that none of these things are there. And the other thing that I want to tell you is that all of these elements are incorporated in more advanced economics into the model of the firm. They just require a lot more mathematics and a lot more economics that we can carry out in an introductory course.